Hi, this is Sean,
Hi, this is Emily.
and this channel is called Wolf Dog Moon. And today we're going to be showing you a tutorial on how to make pizza dough. Here are the ingredients spread out before you, and we're going to take you step by step through the process of making pizza dough, and you can also use that dough to make different kinds of bread. So if you like this kind of content, smash that like button, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on our next video, and comment down below. Let us know if you tried this recipe and what you think. Okay, let's get into this. Okay, some of the tools and materials that you're going to need is as follows. You're going to need to get yourself one of these metal pizza pans, and they come in different shapes. You can get circular ones like this, or you can get the rectangular ones. It just depends on what style of pizza that you want in the end. So you're gonna have to get yourself one of these, and then you're gonna need a 1 cup measuring cup. You're gonna need a spoon for when we're mixing the flour. You're gonna need yourself some teaspoons and tablespoon measurements. Get yourself some kind of cloth to clean up with as you're going along, because making pizza dough is very messy. Get yourself either some sugar. We like to use maple syrup just because it's a little bit easier to get it to dissolve in the water. You're going to be using some kind of big bowl, and then you're going to need a glass bowl to go in the microwave, because we're going to be using the microwave. Get yourself some all-purpose flour. You want to take over now?
There's olive oil, iodized salt, yeast that you'll use.
And here is the yeast we use. It's right here, Active Dry Yeast, original brand. You can pick this up. We purchased it at Meijer, but you just have to look at your local grocery store. But this is the one that we use. And then get yourself we use some bottled water to put the yeast in.
And diced tomatoes.
Okay, so and we got different when we make the sauce to go on the pizza. Okay, now we're going to be getting the yeast ready and setting that up ahead of time. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the glass bowl, and what I'm going to do is move this out of the way. You're going to take the glass bowl, and these water bottles tend to be about roughly 2 cups of water. So you're going to dump 2 cups of water into here. I don't usually measure it out because, like I said, this is close enough. And then you're going to take the maple syrup or sugar, depending on what you have available, and you're going to put 2 teaspoons of the maple syrup. So 1, 2, like that. And you're going to stir it up real good. And basically, you want the water to be lukewarm, and so you want it to be just warm enough, but not too hot or not too warm, because if it's too warm, it'll kill the yeast and it'll have difficulty rising. So what we're going to do is we're going to microwave this for like roughly 30 seconds, depending on your microwave, and just to warm it up so that if you put your finger in, it's lukewarm.
Checking if the water is lukewarm. Now I am putting a good heaping tablespoon of yeast into this thing. This.
All right, very good. Okay, now that the yeast is in here, it's going to start to activate. So I just kind of like to stir it up a little bit just so it mixes up in here. And now what I usually do is you want this to cure and to rise for at least 10 minutes. So what we usually do is, or you can use your watch or whatever, or your phone, but I usually just set on the microwave for 10 minutes. So you want to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to have my lovely assistant Emily set the microwave for 10 minutes. And then what I usually like to do is just set this aside. Because now we're going to move on to the flour and the rest of the ingredients. So you're going to grab the flour. And then you're going to do 6 cups of flour. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that's the flour.
Okay. Putting in a teaspoon of salt.
Okay, so 1 teaspoon of salt, you're going to add it to the flour.
Into this flour mixture. Now, also forgot to mention that you could use a whisk to help stir this up.
Or you can just use a spoon if you don't have a whisk. So
Now I'm going to whisk this.
okay, whisk it up. Be careful you don't get it all over the sides. Just do it really carefully. Meanwhile, while she's whisking this, like I said, the yeast should be rising in the water and sugar mixture or maple syrup mixture. That's a pretty good whisking job.
Down.
Okay, while the yeast is rising in the water and the sugar maple syrup mixture, what you're going to do is just move this aside for a second, the flour, and you're going to take your pizza pan, and then you're going to just add a little bit of olive oil to the pan, because once you have the dough in here, the dough is really sticky and it'll stick to anything. So you're going to want to just spread some olive oil on this pan, because this is where we're going to put the pizza dough to rise. So just go ahead and do it with your hands like that.
Okay, you are also going to need some parchment paper to put on this pan after the yeast rises. The dough on there.
Okay. Any parchment paper will work. Once the dough, again, it's really sticky. So I usually like to put parchment paper on the top, and then you're going to be using some kind of cloth to drape that over the top. Okay, here's what the yeast looks like when it's rising. So it's already starting to bubble and froth and expand. And when this rises enough, then we're gonna add this to the flour and salt mixture in the pink bowl that we showed earlier. Okay, while the yeast is still rising, it's a good idea to go ahead and just put away all the ingredients that you're no longer using, such as the maple syrup, the yeast, the salt, and the flour. You're no longer using that, so
Yeah.
it just doesn't make sense to have it cluttering up your space.
The tip of being a good cook is cleaning up as you go.
All right, here we go. We're gonna mix the yeast and the water mixture into the flour and salt. And what I suggest that you do is, if you have any rings on your hands, because this is where we get into it, you use your hands when you're making pizza dough. And so you're gonna take off your rings, set them aside, put them in a good place. You can find them later. And then what I usually like to do is take a little bit of the olive oil and kind of add it to my hands a little bit, like this, and get them a little bit oiled up, because again, this is so sticky that you're gonna want to minimize the stickiness. So I'm gonna go ahead and dump this in now, like that, and then you can set this aside, and then grab your spoon, and you're gonna stop mixing it up, like this. And it wants to stick to everything, including the spoon. You're just gonna have to be patient, but not too patient, because you gotta wanna mix this thoroughly to get it to start to activate. Because the goal is to get the mixture of the water and the yeast and the sugar to mix thoroughly with the flour. So as follows. Once it gets in there enough, like this, try to get it off the spoon so you don't waste any of the yeast and the flour. You're gonna put that aside now, and here's where you get your hands into it. This is how you make pizza dough. You get messy. So there's no two ways around it. You get your hands in there like this. Keep folding it, pushing it with your hands like this, squeezing it. There's a little bit of physicality to it. Try to roll it over. The goal is to get as much of that flour mixed in as possible, so that you don't waste any of the flour. It's going to want to stick to your hands really sticky. You want to get a close-up over here of the bowl, like overhead. See what it looks like. Put my hands in there. Got Isaac Jenkins over here working the camera. He's our cameraman for today. He's doing a good job. So it starts to get really sticky, and you just want to keep flipping it and squeezing it and mashing it. You know, you could probably punch it or whatever if you wanted to take out your frustrations on the pizza dough. This takes a little bit of elbow grease, metaphorically speaking. You just want to get in there and muscle it, and get that yeast blended in as evenly as possible. And because you can't see where the yeast is going, you don't want to end up with dry patches of the dough where there's no yeast. So you just want to work it, squish it like modeling clay. Pretend you're making some kind of weird sculpture. So this is pretty good. And then once you get it nice and again, this is really messy, so it helps. That's why it helps to have cleaned off the counter or wherever you're making this of all the stuff that you don't need. And just like Emily said, that it's a good tip to clean as you go, so that it also minimizes frustration. You don't want to be knocking things over by mistake, or you just, when you go to grab an ingredient, it's difficult to find because you have a messy area.
Yeah, you don't want to mess up.
Here you go. It should look kind of like this, a big gooey mass. And then what you're going to do is you can move this aside, and here's where the pan comes in, and you're going to plop this right in the middle like that, and you got yourself some pizza dough. And what you're going to want to do is let this rise for, I usually like to let it rise for a good 3 hours, but it'll rise in as little as an hour. But the longer you can hold out and wait, so if you can wait like the full 3 hours, then when you go to spread it in the pans that you use, it'll be easier to spread. So it's gonna rise the best in about 3 to 4 hour period.
Yeah, it'll be way easier.
So this is something you're gonna want to do maybe in the morning if you're planning to have a pizza party later on in the day. And so this will make about, if you're using a pan this size, 4 pizzas. If you're using the larger rectangular size plates, metal pans I mean, then you can make about 2 pizzas, maybe 2 pizzas and then 1 this size. So this actually yields a good amount of pizza. So for the next step, what I like to do is, again, this is kind of sticky. It'll become actually stickier when it starts to rise. So what I usually like to do is take a little olive oil and spread it on the top, because we're going to put the parchment paper on the top, and we don't want the parchment paper to stick. If you don't do this, the parchment paper will stick. And the olive oil, it's healthy fats, and it also will make the pizza dough taste better overall. So you just coat that with some olive oil, and I'm gonna have my lovely assistant Emily get us some parchment paper to put over the top.
Okay, I am spreading the wax paper on the top.
Like that. Okay, and now the olive oil will keep the wax paper from sticking later after the dough starts to rise. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take a cloth like this, and you're going to drape it over the top, as like so. And now you're going to set this to rise, like I said, for about at least an hour, but preferably for at least 3 hours. So you're going to want to set this in a kind of just room temperature, and this will start to rise and expand, and then you'll have pizza dough. And then we included the cans of sauce and stuff right here. If you want to zoom in over here on the sauce cans, we just use, you can get yourself some diced tomatoes like this to put on the top of the pizza, and some tomato sauce like this. And all you do is we make our own sauce using this with some herbs and spices like oregano, basil, some olive oil in it, and some garlic, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and you'll have yourself a nice pizza sauce base. And this is an inexpensive way to go, just using the cans. And or you can get the store brand jars, but I find that this ends up coming out better if you do it with these cans. And so this wraps up our pizza dough demonstration. And if you have any questions, post them in the comments below, and let us know if you've tried this recipe and how it worked out. Once the dough rises, you'll be spreading it out on the pizza pans as we showed you, and you just set when you're going to go to cook your pizza after you spread the sauce on and whatever cheese you're going to use. You're going to set the oven for 400 degrees, and then you usually cook once it's 400 degrees, you cook the pizza in the oven for between 18 minutes and 20 minutes, and just keep an eye on it and make sure that the bottom of the pizza is brown. Just check it with a spatula, and then you'll have yourself some yummy pizza, and you can have parties and have a good old time. So again, if you have any questions, post them in the comments below. And in the meantime, we hope this video finds you having an amazing day, and we hope you have a blessed day. Signing out.